Good evening, welcome. We have reached our final session tonight. And just to address one of the key words that we're using all the time here, which is bardo, which just means space. We say intermediate state. And with bardo, we just means what's in between. And because nothing actually has any, you could say, reality, we're always in between. The possibility of liberation is that we recognize phenomena as they manifest within the various, you could say, reference points that we have. And of course, everything we do with Vipassana is about accommodating the realization of this nature that cannot be objectified, cannot be grasped. So we would say that we continually have this opportunity to recognize for the Buddhas that see beyond the various constructs, for whom there's nothing that is objectified, nothing that there's no duality, then of course we would say there's no shifting phenomena. And yet for us who are conditioned in terms of our perception of self and other, appearance and emptiness, obviously this continual grasping at other drives us through various spaces. So we have these different bardos. We have the bardo between when we're born and when we pass away, when we pass away, when we're born, meditation, dream, and so forth. And in general, we could understand everything in terms of the bardo. So here in this last chapter, bardo is again the point of departure in our discussion. We last time covered what happened when we die and the state, you could say, when all our manifestation arises, where the yogi sees all our manifestation as the peaceful, wrathful deities and sentient beings, not recognizing, then they simply proceed terrified to try to find a reference point, a rebirth, a solid ground. So that's what we're going to be looking at here now, which is the third bardo, which is the transitional state of the junction between past and future existences. And we would sometimes just refer to this as the bardo of becoming. While briefly lent this precious human body's white sail, pushed by clean intentioned gentle wind, without turning back towards miserable samsaric deserts, and making the error of missing this chance, try to receive virtue's jewels by crossing the waves of ocean mind to the serene continent of the triple gems, since doing this is more meaningful than anything else. If you realize your own wisdom mind, that is all. Nobody knows anything other than that. So, as we saw last time, an experienced practitioner, or rather we arrived at this point where an experienced practitioner may also be liberated in the bardo of becoming, or the transitional state of the junction between past and future existences, sipe bardo. So here, Thinley Norbu says, it is called a transitional state because mind has moved from primordial purity and is wandering in the suffering of the delusion of the habit of reality, unless the potential to return to primordial purity is recognized and attained through practice. Its duration depends on each individual's previously created karmic habit. So the duration of this last bardo is dependent on our karma. And also, we would say that it's dependent on what will come next. Most pass through these bardos although those with heavy karma or great realization may pass directly into their next life or directly attain enlightenment. I think we looked at that last time, where after death and due to negative karma then, or extremely negative karma, some pass these transitional states, these bardos, and take directly rebirth in the lower realms. And then some, due to powerful practice, are liberated without any bardo and are perfectly enlightened. However, most of us pass through these transitional states, and at this juncture, if we were not liberated in the previous bardo of the Sambhogakaya manifestations, the bardo of the Dharmata, then there is a chance for liberation here. In general, those who have passed away might not know that they have died. Practitioners of varying capacities will be liberated in the 3 bardos after death. And then Rinpoche, he reiterates these 3 in detail. So this is concluding the discussion around the bardo. Many experience confusion and can't understand that they've passed away. They experience having a mental body, and with that, they perceive that they perceive themselves as they were before, and they attempt to communicate with their family and friends, but that doesn't help. Nobody hears them. And so in the bardo, we might grow fearful and discover that that all of a sudden our existence is not what we thought it was. We might also discover that we don't throw any shadows, we don't leave footprints and so forth. So we realize that our existence as we knew it is no longer there. So this could lead to a lot of turmoil, and we find ourselves here at a juncture then between the attachment to the past life and also then perceptions of what is going to come. We have some clairvoyance, some indications of what our karma is going to be. Now, practitioners with confidence, they're liberating through recognizing the illusory nature of appearances. Medium practitioners, they're liberated through their transformation of phenomena into pure Sambhogakaya, according to their personal practice, whatever sadhana. They might recognize whatever arises according to the mandala of their particular deity. So these 2, the first kind, one is the supreme kind that recognizes at the moment of death, recognizing the luminosity. The others are then practitioners who are familiar with their wisdom phenomena, and they're then liberated within this in the pure Sambhogakaya. And those who aren't liberated in this way, they can pray to their deity, to their teacher, to be liberated then in a pure realm. So we have then these 3 stages, and let's see. So again, if death has not been transformed into Dharmakaya, if the bardo of Dharmata has not been transformed into Sambhogakaya, then the bardo of becoming, the 3rd one here, can be transformed into the Nirmanakaya. So here, in that case, in the last case, then practitioners can be reborn into the immeasurable Nirmanakaya pure realms, where manifestations of Buddha teach. This is for persons who have really strong connection with the teachings, really aspire to meet with the Buddha's teaching. And they might not have the wisdom to recognize the ground luminosity. They don't have the wisdom to recognize their own phenomena as pure. And yet they're very connected to the teaching and have pure aspirations and so forth. And so this is then for the persons who have the dedication and the aspiration to be reborn a place where there's a Buddha teaching. And there, then, such a person can proceed along the path. It's like if we have a broken waterway that's been repaired, this allows the water to flow. So the consciousness can continue. It could have gone astray, but then if we have such purity, then we continue our practice in the next life. So this new body can be obtained then with all the qualities to practice the path, and this is something that comes from prayers and aspirations in this present human life, aspiring to meet the Dharma, aspiring to continue practice and so forth. So this process, which begins with consciousness visualized as a seed syllable, and Rinpoche describes then how we, as we described earlier about the practice of Po and so forth, this enables us to continue then our practice in the pure realm. So when we take rebirth in such a way, then there's a sense that we've been blessed by the wisdom deity, by realization, and as a consequence then our rebirth there will be clearer and accompanied by auspicious signs. Next is the transitional state of dreaming, the bardo of dream. So dream happens between waking and deep sleep. The ordinary painful condition of samsara is to be stuck in duality. This comes about due to our nihilist fixating on waking phenomena. So first of all, Thinley Norbu defines then what we mean with the bardo of dream. He says it's called a transitional state because mind has moved from the primordial purity and is wandering in the suffering of the delusion of the habit of reality, unless the potential to return to primordial purity is recognized and attained through practice. Its duration depends on each individual's previously created karmic habit. So we've discussed the notion of nihilist habit repeatedly throughout this work, and it is the perception of phenomena without any sense of what lies beyond phenomena. And so there's no awareness of mind's wisdom. And with that kind of habit, then we move continually in dualistic spaces, both when we're dreaming and when we're awake. And this goes on throughout life after life. This ordinary deluded mind is always stuck in this duality, and it suffers continually until it then awakens through the practice of the path. So we need to understand the teaching, the Buddha Dharma, and apply the practices of the Buddha Dharma, whatever it might be, the gradual path, the theory and practice according to the sutras, as well as also then the theory and practice of the mantra, such as the practice of wisdom deity, as inseparable from great emptiness. So these are the methods that we could use to purify this delusion. Dreams affect our continuous mind and waking experience. Waking and dream affect each other mutually. Negative dreams may affect our waking state, yet this is something that can be remedied. So with this nihilist habit, we don't see the mind's wisdom and we're only interested in waking phenomena. And yet we are affected by the dreams when we are in them. And there in the dreams we experience happiness and unhappiness. As long as we have the dualistic grasping at any kind of experience, then dreams, they affect our entire realm of phenomena as it arises out of our ordinary continuous deluded mind. So dreams such as nightmares, they can actually impact on our waking experience. And likewise, obviously, as we generally think of it, is that waking experience is what shapes or affects our dreams. So waking and dreaming mutually affect each other, and they sow seeds for future experiences. So we wouldn't say that dreams have no consequence. They also leave traces on our alaya vijnana. And we would say bad dreams, they can cause trouble for us in the waking state. And sometimes these troubles, they're not cured just by taking medicines or doing some sort of therapy, particularly for that kind of approach. Thinley Norbu just says that these various kinds of upheavals and experiences that we might experience, they are, quote, very difficult to treat with substantial means such as medicines and sophisticated verbiage, end of quote. The effective remedy is practice. The reason is the practice goes to the depth, to the root, it goes into the subject, the experience rather than just the experiences. So in that sense, practice goes deeper than merely just adjusting or changing, processing psychological material. Rinpoche writes, quote, "We should practice with the optimistic belief that we can create positive dreams which influences both our dreams and daytime phenomena positively," end of quote. The essence of dream practice is to see that waking phenomena are the same as illusory qualities, have the same illusory qualities as dreams. We should recognize and transform dreams into pure phenomena. So the essence of dream practice is to see that waking phenomena are the same as the illusory phenomena that we have in dreams. They're both equally delusory or illusory. And one can then proceed to join this kind of practice with luminosity. Rinpoche, he writes, quote, like lighting a torch in a dark hall, we must have awareness. When the outwardly distracting conceptions of the six senses are dissolving inwardly into sleep and mindfulness has not yet been lost in unconsciousness, if we can recognize the pure, untarnished nature of unending wisdom, it is luminosity. We must try to remain in this luminosity as long as possible. End of quote. So in this way, transforming negative dreams into positive dreams, we should gradually transform any dream into the, you could say, objectless quality of luminosity. This kind of practice will transform waking experience into pure noble habit that naturally increases intangible energy, that blossoms into wisdom energy, where we have fewer obscure dreams, and instead we have pure dreams of Buddha fields, where we encounter Buddhas, hear teachings, and continually practice. Transformed noble dream practice affects everyday waking life, mingling the two states as one. So once we have effectively integrated such practice, then this affects both conditions. With successful practice, we experience continuous wisdom phenomena. So dream is a very important practice, and if we persevere in this yoga of dream practice, this affects also our deity practice, and also deity practice affects our dream practice. So they enhance each other. And the noble phenomena, both when we're awake as sadhana practitioners of deity, and when we're recognizing and transforming dreams, then noble phenomena of both these waking and dreaming states will become one. Thinley Norbu says, quote, through our dream practice, when we die, there is no more death, there is no more birth, and there is no more deep dreamless sleep. So such a practitioner, end of quote. So such a practitioner is already prepared for death, and in fact takes the experience of death as a continual opportunity to train for when we pass away. So this is a very profound path. The goal of it is enlightenment. With the realization that comes from uniting dream and sleep, then the boundaries between what Rinpoche calls waking dreaming and sleeping redreaming, end of quote, are eliminated. And we experience continuous wisdom phenomena and stainless emptiness. The recognition of great emptiness, i.e. the emptiness that's endowed with a heart of pure awareness, is crucial for any practice. And we need to be guided in this by a competent wisdom master. Now we have the bardo of meditation. Now, as you might remember, this is a subsection of the bardo of this life. So if we count the bardo of this life as one, then we have four bardos, which are the three bardos between dying and rebirth, or including dying, bardo dhammata, and the bardo of becoming, all related to, you could say, our rebirth, death and rebirth. And then we have the fourth, which is the bardo of this life. But within the bardo of this life, if we add to it the two bardos of dream and meditation, then we have six in all. So meditation is where practitioners, they sustain wisdom, and they do so until reaching enlightenment. Thinley Norbu says, it is called a transitional state because the movement away from primordial purity and back to primordial purity creates a path between the primordial purity of the basis and the primordial purity of the result of enlightenment, which is inexpressible, boundless unity. Since there is a path, it automatically means that there is a transitional state between the basis and the result. Its duration depends on when the result of practice is reached. So this is also a classification that we use when we talk about ground tantra and path tantra and fruition tantra. So here basis means ground. So the various in the various vehicles, then in the sutra vehicle, mind is conditioned. We operate with the ordinary mind. And as such, this dualistic mind can give rise to samsara and nirvana. In the mantra vehicle, mind is seen as intrinsically enlightened. This is then the unconditional, undiluted mind. Great yogis recognize without stages. Others travel the stages of the path. So if we're practitioners of mantra, if we have the recognition of the ground luminosity, then we don't really think in terms of stages and paths. Whereas if we're looking at the ordinary mind, then we do think in terms of stages of the path. That being said, even a great yogi would notice the differences just in the ordinary, you could say the mind that's being exhausted. So even great yogis, they do have some, you could say, reference points in terms, and not so much in terms of what they're abiding within in terms of their practice, but you could say more in terms of what's being eliminated. This path is pursued with the help of eliminating the 5 faults with the 8 remedies. Now this you find in various, numerous places. When we speak about particularly shamatha, but also meditation in general, we talk about 5 faults that can occur. What is it again? Laziness and forgetting the practice, excitement, depression, and then not applying the remedies and over applying the remedies. And then there's 8 remedies for that, these 5 faults. But anyway, you can find this discussion, which is quite extensive, in numerous places. You can find it in there's a discussion by Trungpa Rinpoche, which is called, I think it's called Calm and Insight. There's teachings by Khenpo Chödrak here in Australia on this. There's teachings by Charlie Rinpoche in numerous places. Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche in the Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma in Volume 1 has extensive discussion of that. And also yours truly, with a friend of mine, Stefan Mager, we did a work called Shamatha meditation with some charts and visuals that explain these. But anyway, in the sutra vehicles, then mind is seen as a seed that holds the causes for both confusion and of samsara and the liberation of enlightenment. So there you could say the notion of enlightenment is something that's conditioned, whereas in the mantra vehicle, the mind is seen as unconditional and pure from the outset. So there we would say Buddha nature is manifest. In the sutras, we would say Buddha nature is a potential. In the mantra approach, we speak about Buddha nature as already spontaneously present. Now they may realize self-liberation of confusion, the highest yogis then, through the effortless path such as great perfection, while others, they might need to experience this through a gradual path, meditating gradually on shamatha and vipassana. So when we practice in that way, then we would practice with these five faults that need to be eliminated and the 8 remedies that need to be applied. Rongzum Pandita, who was a great Nyingma sage, he was contemporary with Marpa Lotsawa, and he was incredibly important in terms of establishing the Nyingma view at a time when there were a lot of emerging and competing Dharma traditions. And he wrote some very profound instructions, and here we have then some instructions on how to practice with our ordinary confused mind, applying the practice of meditation. So the monkey must be tied, it must be tethered with the rope of mindfulness. The cat must be leashed. This is the cat pen of the lethal glaciers. This cat must be bound with the realization of egolessness. And the collection of an empty, ruined house must be destroyed. So that means that our normal attachment to the aspects of our being in terms of our clinging to self, what we call the 5 skandhas, this construction that is a heap of conditions that we attribute to our self, this notion of them as being an inherent self must be destroyed with the view that view of emptiness, the view of vipassana. The windows must be shut, so the mind should not be distracted by the sense perceptions of the outer objects. The king's treasury must be opened, so we should be clever in knowing the nature of our mind. It's, you could say, potential for disaster, it's potential for enlightenment, and how to constructively work with this mind. So in both the sutra and mantra, we speak of the 5 paths, the 10 levels, and so forth. There's a lot of discussions around this. You can find in numerous places. Oh gosh, the jewel ornament of liberation. There are some really big works on this. Grounds and Paths, as published by Sadra, translated by Karl Brunholz. And a lot of sort of summaries around this, numerous places, but in general, this is how we in the Mahayana define then the paths that we travel and the different bodhisattva levels. However, in the Vajrayana, we can understand these paths as follows, and this actually is somewhat simpler for those who are attracted to the Vajrayana. This is a significant way of understanding it, and simplifies, you could say, gives us a clear overview. The path of accumulation, and then from Thinley Norbu quote, includes studying with a sublime teacher in order to understand and establish the correct point of view, purifying obscurations and accumulating merit. So that's the first, the path of accumulation. The second path of joining is the beginning of recognizing point of view and uniting with the path of sublime seeing. It is like the dawn which comes from the sun rays of sublime seeing's wisdom. As unborn natural mind manifests, it is experienced as insubstantial form, which elevates the practitioner on the path of joining to the recognition of sublime seeing. 3. The path of sublime seeing does not depend on any method and is actually seeing the inconceivable, stainless, essential nature of wisdom mind. The path of meditation is the continuous practice of the states of the wisdom of abiding in non-duality and the wisdom after attaining non-duality until they are inseparable. 5th, this is then what we call the path of no more learning. At this point, all practice is exhausted into the path of no more learning. So the 2 first paths, they are paths of activities that lead up to then insight. The 3rd path then is insight, the path of seeing, and this is then deepened through the path of meditation until we arrive at enlightenment when there is nothing more to learn. Now, in terms of Practicing meditation, there's two kinds. There's with form and without form. So whatever countless teachings we have, they all taught according to the different capacities, inclinations of various individuals, yet they all have the same essence. And each teacher then has to adapt the teaching to each individual student. So the methods that we have for this integration of wisdom are countless. But they can be condensed into, as far as meditation goes, then into form and formless meditation. Meditation with form are the skillful means that bring us to stainless emptiness. The gateway to seeing beyond appearance is appearance itself. So at the beginning, the objectless reality of emptiness is then effectively assimilated through meditation that can be objectified as form, some meditation on form. So such meditation enables us to appreciate it enables us to appreciate then the manifestation of wisdom of emptiness. And that's what all meditation is for. And this wisdom of emptiness is what realizes the unity of appearances and emptiness. So form has always been our reference point habitually. So the gateway for us at this point, effectively to use our existing disposition and mentality and habit, is then to practice the meditation on form. And that's where we have a practice which has to do with engaging appearances. So the appearing aspect, which is then the object of this kind of meditation, it's attractive for us. It enables us to engage according to who we are. And it's something then that ultimately leads us beyond attachment to appearances. Until dualistic fixation is eliminated, our meditation will inevitably have form. There will be an object of mind and a subject watching. We can still meditate without an object as we do it in shamatha vipassana practice. Formless meditation can, however, cause dullness, so it needs to be guided by a wisdom teacher. So in the sutra teachings, then we would have various kinds of form meditation, and we would always have some sort of subtle reference point. And Thinley Norbu says, until dualistic mind finishes, there is the object of mind and the subject that watches it. So just meditating without form can cause dullness, as it lacks wisdom phenomena. It means that all that we're doing is essentially just calming the mind down, but it doesn't have that spark of insight. We become dull from such kind of meditation. So it's important that we don't just leave the mind sort of peaceful, but without any clarity. So formless meditation needs to be done with some guidance from a wisdom teacher, someone who has realization. And this is essential because we need continually that our practice is connecting to the qualities of wisdom. So we need to appreciate that in terms of what we're doing. And when we do practices such as shamatha that might not have involved any kind of particular, you could say, wisdom objects such as deity or something that embodies the qualities of enlightenment, where we're simply just coming back to the simplicity of the breath, this is not useless altogether, because this is something that is very good for remedying scattered thoughts. And many have observed, particularly how people in the modern day and age, they really do need to have something that remedies this. Modern people are very often much less grounded than you would have in traditional Buddhist societies. So the practice of shamatha is particularly valuable. Now, when we practice with form, then we're here talking about form in terms of something that embodies the sacred quality of the sacred qualities of wisdom. Then form can be the three Vajra syllables, like Om, Ah, and Hum. And that can be associated then with some sadhana practice. For example, the Buddha. Shamatha Vipassana is a method that operates with the ordinary mind, and it gradually brings about enlightenment. So in Shamatha we can focus on ordinary external forms such as objects of the breath. Extraordinary focus. So this is where we then go into the more Vajrayana approach to shamatha, and that is where we then focus on the three Vajra syllables or the deity image, such as Buddha Shakyamuni. And Rinpoche is here referring to the benefits of this kind of practice, and he does that with a quote actually which we find in Jamgon Vipan Rinpoche's Buddha ritual, or what's sometimes called the Buddha sadhana. So this quote runs, "Stainless golden-colored body, always exquisite Lord of the universe. Whoever beholds this is in Bodhisattva Samadhi." And we also have other places where we speak about this practice called Buddha Anusmriti, which is to recollect the Buddha. And we will, another place in the same, in Jamgon Vibham Sadhana, it also says, whoever thinks of the Buddha abides in this, the samadhi of the Bodhisattva. So to have that as a reference point, it not only calms the mind and enables us to see through the constructions of conceptual thought, but it also brings about the presence of clarity that's endowed with the qualities of enlightenment. So we would say there is this element of blessing that is far more, has far greater and deeper benefit. Nothing is lacking in formless meditation. Formless meditation does not, however, mean to remain in a blank, void nothingness. So in the various kinds of formless meditation, all the qualities, they are, in such kind of formless meditation, all qualities are complete. So even if we do not do visualization and prayers, it's not as if something is lacking. And there's a quote then from the Guya Samaj where it says, "If you wish to attain supreme enlightenment, do not read volumes of scriptures and do not circumambulate stupas. If you do so, it is very difficult to attain enlightenment." So this is one of these important quotes because it takes us out of some of our standard assumptions, and it introduces the essential nature of wisdom, in that we might endlessly rely on relative practices that operate, skillful as they might still operate within the habitual parameters that keep us in samsara. And so here the implication is that we should break free from that. And this is particularly then what we mean with the practice of meditation. So this kind of meditation doesn't mean that we remain in, or when we meditate, we should not remain in this blank void nothingness. We should, ideally then, abide in the state of non-dualistic awareness mind, which connects to stainless Dharmakaya. Any questions? There was a question which I think was quite good, so I'm just going to read it. It's, if dreams can impact our waking mind, can we say that dreams create karma? Or are they more the working out of karma? No, dreams can, and that was, I think, Rinpoche's point, is that they can create karma. They have an impact. So just like our waking state has an impact on our consciousness that is reflected in the dreams, then also the dreams has an impact on our consciousness that is reflected in our perceptions in ordinary life. So they work together. They both have an impact. Okay, then when we're meditating, gross thoughts, conspicuous thoughts, they're easy to recognize. Subtle thoughts, less easy to recognize. So meditation should be a remedy for dualistic conception. Obvious gross concepts, they're easy to catch, but the undertow of subtle conception is very hard to catch. So here Thinley Norbu Rinpoche quotes Rongzum Pandit again, and he gives two examples about how easy it is to catch apparent conceptions and how difficult it is to catch dormant conceptions. The apparent gross concepts, they're easily caught or held with recognition. And that's kind of like when a crocodile catches a seagull. So if you have this crocodile that catches a seagull, it's quite easy to catch it, hold it. Whereas the subtle ones, they're difficult to recognize, and that's like the same crocodile that's chasing the shadow on the water of a seagull in flight. So there you could say the seagull has an impact, but it's very subtle, and it's just a shadow. And the crocodile has a hard time catching that. So the dualistic mind, our dualistic mind, it moves incessantly, even at the highest bodhisattva levels. We need to merge meditation with and without form. In such unified practice, appearances never disturb us. Now, our dualistic mind, even at the highest, what we call the three levels of non-returner, three pure bhumis, there's still this some subtle sense of objectification, some subtle sense of apprehension or experience of phenomena that we hold as real. And so the bodhisattva, even though the bodhisattva dwells in meditation, where there is complete equanimity, when the bodhisattva emerges, then there are these subtle dualistic mind that's still present. So we need to eventually merge this meditation that has no reference point with the dualistic mind, so that eventually we realize this lack of this non-duality in post-meditation. And once that happens for the bodhisattva, then the appearances, they are never any disturbance. For such a person, then nothing really disturbs, and in fact everything is the display of the mind. The more display there is, then you could say the mind is what Rinpoche calls transformed into the unintentional, complete, timeless awakening of wisdom mind. And that's then where Rinpoche quotes this sutra of increasing faith, where it says, there is no wisdom other than the natural passions. So the passions themselves are wisdom. So for the yogi, passions are manifestations of awareness. For most of us, for most people, the gradual practice of settling the mind is indispensable. So this is, of course, always a tricky thing, and it's very intimate and personal, and it's there we need guidance from a teacher, as well as a great deal of wisdom and honesty. So this is the difference between the yogi that can take the kleshas and the confusion, dawns as wisdom, take that as the path, or those that need to first settle the mind and bring the mind onto the path and enable the path then to be actual, genuine Dharma. Without the and also Rinpoche quote, he has another quote where he says, sister, like this, for example, wherever the sky is burning, the sky cannot be burnt by fire. Sister, likewise this, whatever is naturally clear light cannot be obscured by any sudden temporary passions that arise. From the point of view of wisdom itself, then passions are just a distorted kind of wisdom. So those who have the insight and who can sustain this undistorted space of the great perfection, this realization, this experience. For such a person, then, meditation realization comes about easily. But there's far between such persons, and for most, their minds first need to be made calm and clean, like allowing muddy water to settle and clear, in order then to create the tranquility that allows the clarity of insight to manifest. Now, doing that then, in order to settle the muddy water, then we practice shamatha. And there's various ways. We would talk about the 9 levels of shamatha in the scriptures, but in the tradition, the practice lineage, then one would speak of the various stages of experience. So there's different kinds. Sometimes we talk about 5, sometimes we talk about 4, and here Rinpoche talks about 3, which is that initially thoughts are like a waterfall. Then eventually when we've practiced, then we begin to achieve some stability. Then thoughts are like a river. And eventually then thoughts become calm, just like an ocean. So these are various stages on the path. And when we practice, we might have good signs. We might have these kind of increasing of experiences where we become gradually calmer. We might also experience bliss, clarity, and non-thought. At that point, it's very important that we realize that any kind of objectification or grasping at these experiences is what ties us to samsara. When experiences on the path arise, it's essential for the student to discuss these with a wisdom teacher. When a bit like we said before, when visualizing the Buddha, it has great benefits. And that's where we, for example, using Jamgon Viphan's Buddha ritual, then we, and by the way, I think in this case we're actually referring to the historical Buddha, so I'm guilty of not putting Buddha with capital. This is not the generic Buddha, this is the specific Buddha. Anyway, when we visualize the Buddha, and we might do that as our shamatha practice, then there's a lot of benefits there. But we can then focus in various ways. So to dispel dullness and attain wisdom, we say focus on the top of the Buddha, his Ushnisha. To increase merit and attain flawless ecstasy, focus between the Buddha's eyebrows. To benefit others, focus below the throat. To dispel elation, focus on the Buddha's heart. So these are different ways that we could just practice our shamatha with specific attention to the states of mind that we might have. These are then applying antidotes. Recognition of wisdom needs to be further developed. And as we do that, mistakes can happen on the path. So through recognition of wisdom mind, sublime seeing is attained. So this is like we talked about before, the various paths in terms of the 5 paths. Then through the path of accumulation, the path of joining, then we arrive at the path of seeing. But this still needs to be further developed with more learning and practice until we are free from samsara's phenomena. And such wisdom can then be transformed into complete omniscience. But as far as mistakes that happen on the path, then, we would say our meditation can be obscured in 3 ways. As an extinguished lamp, as a flickering lamp, as water leaking on the same spot. So as an extinguished lamp, it's like when our practice is obscured through outward distraction, and our mind will simply be unclear, and it will lack any kind of self-awareness. So at that point, there's not much brightness happening. It's like an extinguished lamp. Likewise, if we are meditating, but we are sorry. Okay, if we are the first one, if we are our shamatha practices, then it's if we're distracted by external objects, then it's unclear, like an extinguished lamp. If the mind is obscured through lack of mindful awareness, it will be unclear, like a lamp flickering due to a faulty wick. And also, we could be focused but with grasping, which is then like water leaking on the same spot. So that means that our mind is always going into circling in the same places. The habitual patterns are not interrupted. So all of this is remedied with mindfulness. So as far as shamatha practice goes, then when we have these various kinds of conditions, then all of these are remedied with us simply coming back to the object of our mindfulness. We need to be aware of the shortcomings that can happen, but the remedy itself is this simplicity of coming back to mindfulness. Similarly also, then vipassana can be obscured in three ways. Also, pure effort can be obscured in three ways. Pure samadhi can be obscured in three ways. And mindfulness can be obscured in three ways. So when we say vipassana can be obscured in three ways, it's when we're getting distracted by phenomena due to a loss of recognition of egolessness. It's failing to see that phenomena are dependently arisen, and as a result all our conceptions, thoughts are deluded. And also, without any kind of meditative absorption, there's no real heading towards any or developing any wisdom mind. We're just like a bird circling in a small dark space. So that's the first three faults that have to do with vipassana. Then there are the three faults that cause the obscuration of pure effort. And these are the three faults that are being stuck in not wanting to change. It's like a baby bird in a nest that actually doesn't want to leave the nest. Then there's losing samadhi simply because we are following a wrong track. It's like shooting an arrow towards a fallen target. It's simply pointless activity. And then falling into excessive grasping at clarity. It's like being excited about external objects. We might get all excited about what's happening with our meditation. So there's like being this might be meditation, but it's just as we're being just as you could say self-absorbed in our little delirious delight that it's no different from being excited about external objects. And then there's the three causes that obscure pure samadhi, and that's the desire for concrete results. There's desire for, say, experiences, desire for prescience, clairvoyance, and this desire to perform miracles. So this is just like, again, sort of our immaturity. We're like a farmer who intends to make butter, but never gets to the actual making of the butter because he ends up using all the milk just to drink or to make yogurt out of it. And finally, there's the three faults that cause the obscuration of mindfulness. So this is thinking that one has attained enlightenment, being attached to one's view, and losing pure perception about teachings and teachers, like a young and spoiled aristocrat who, through his vulgar behavior, loses the nobility of his lineage. Ultimately, all objects of meditation are without substance. Attachment creates obstacles. All practice must be permeated by the wisdom of stainless emptiness. So the object of any form or formless practice is in reality without substance. So attachment to creating tangible results as a result of being caught up in substantialist ideas, this is an obstacle. It can create barriers when, in fact, there aren't any. So one may be fond of sophisticated thought, but when we're practicing, it's essential to let go of these ideas. our fascination with our sophisticated and complicated ideas. All virtue is in fact contained in abiding in the view. And here we're not talking philosophy, but we are talking about an actual experience of insight. All practice must be permeated by the view of wisdom space, samantabhadra, which is the great unobjectifiable, stainless emptiness. And that is then the mother of all the Buddhas. So we would say wisdom is samantabhadra and space is samantabhadri. So it's said in the contemplation of enlightened bodhicitta, if it is not permeated by kunduzangmo, samantabhadri, even virtuous noble activity becomes the activity of demons and is finally exhausted. If it is permeated by kunduzangmo, samantabhadri, even the activity of demons becomes the activity of enlightenment. So if we are settled in the view, then anything we do becomes practice, becomes enlightened activity. Meditators have two kinds of practice. There's the meditation, which is then, as we saw earlier, wisdom of abiding in non-duality. And then we have post-meditation, wisdom after attaining non-duality. So meditators have two kinds of experience, meditation and post-meditation. These are, quote, two experiences of the wisdom of abiding in non-duality and the wisdom after attaining non-duality, end of quote. So there are two kinds of beings who do not experience these states. There are those who don't practice at all, and then there's those who are already enlightened. So for those who are on the path then, these categories of meditation and post-meditation, they are essential. Whenever we meditate, even just sitting in meditation posture, then we should remain in the abiding in non-duality, in great stainless space. It is not merely balancing opposing forces, but it's remaining in vast, open, magnanimous space. And after meditation, we should make sure that we don't get caught in our previous habitual patterns. Excuse me just a sec. So, meditators must be free of grasping. We are freed through meditation, and this spills into the non-grasping of post-meditation. So, grasping can lure practitioners of deity practice to hold on to clarity. In fact, grasping is the big cause for samsara, and of course all our practice of meditation is to let go of any kind of grasping. But particularly practitioners of sadhana might have some extraordinary phenomena happening, and they might have visions or dreams of spiritual nature, of deity and so forth, and they will be fascinated with these visions. So it's important not to be, you could say, fascinated and cling to these experiences. Through seeing the delusory nature of phenomena, we're freed from clinging to reality. And this is something that comes from meditating on emptiness and the quality of unobstructedness that then we sustain in the afterglow, the post-meditation. Until the highest level, there is still the division of meditation and post-meditation. Like we saw before, even the bodhisattvas on the three pure bhumis, they still have this. Working with these skillfully, the boundaries dissolve. Working with skillfully these, the boundaries dissolve. That's not even Danish. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, maybe working skillfully with these, or working with these skillfully. Anyway, until enlightenment, then there's always dualistic habit. So bodhisattvas in meditation, they are what Rinpoche calls in the state of wisdom of abiding in non-duality. They do not have any habit of ordinary sentient beings. But in post-meditation, then, as Rinpoche calls it, the state of the meditation of wisdom after attaining non-duality, there's still the residue of dualistic habit, although this is transformed through the skillful means into non-duality. So this is, for example, the practice of the 6 paramitas, and for practitioners of sadhanas, then the sustaining the sacred outlook in post-meditation. And eventually these residual dualistic phenomena then exhaust. So there are many systems to define meditation and post-meditation. And as much as the practitioner can abide in the non-duality of meditation, that much his or her post-meditation is lighter and more pure. So until enlightenment, we need to apply ourselves to purify this duality in meditation and also between meditation and post-meditation. Oh, sorry, that's not at all no. The point was, yes, of course, when we practice meditation, then we have lighter phenomena, and this spills into our post-meditation. But we also eventually need to dissolve altogether the duality between meditation and post-meditation, so that there's no distinction between the two. And yeah, with direct introduction to natural mind, there is no distinction between meditation and post-meditation. So this we see in the Great Perfection teaching, where we say no difference between session and out of session. With an introduction, with a realization or recognition of the natural mind, then there is this recognition of wisdom that doesn't have any kind of you could say dualistic fixations, no notions of meditation, post-meditation, and so forth. So this kind of recognition or wisdom abides within non-dual emptiness. And in there, Rinpoche, this is 196, second paragraph in there, Rinpoche beautifully describes how meditation and post-meditation, they're one taste. Faculties and methods determine how swiftly we may attain accomplishment. So we're all different, and we all see things differently, and accordingly also the various practices are skillfully accommodating these differences, so they are effectively different. So also then the experiences and the qualities of the path, they may vary. So although the destination, the goal is the same, not everyone arrives there at the same time. It depends on who they are, what the method they use, and so on. Some might be gifted, some might have dispositions from previous lives, and some might not. So in the 3 levels of Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana meditation and post-meditation, in the 3 levels of Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, meditation and post-meditation all complement each other. So when we have these classifications such as the 5 paths, 10 levels, they actually don't apply to the wisdom of non-duality, the wisdom that we settle in meditation. When we talk about the different paths and levels and so forth, they actually only refer to the post-meditation. You could say in the settling into meditation, there's no such concepts. Whereas in post-meditation, yes, then we can evaluate what's happening. And this is really important actually in terms of us as practitioners, that we don't sit and evaluate what's going on as we're practicing. As we would say, the main practice, meaning meditation, should be without reference point, or at least without distraction. So when we speak about levels and paths, these are from the point of view of the post-meditation. And it's in the post-meditation that the qualities of the practitioners become increasingly manifest then as the obscurations they diminish. It's a bit like Rinpoche gives the example of a puddle that dries up in the sun. The neurosis and neurotic actions and so forth, they diminish in the practitioner gradually. In the Hinayana path, post-meditation brings detachment. It informs and inspires the practice of meditation, and it eventually leads to arhatship, the settling into peace. In the Mahayana path, post-meditation is seeing the illusory nature of all phenomena, and it leads to compassion and the attainment of enlightenment, Dharmakaya and Rupakaya, the benefiting others, the form bodies. And the Rupakaya then includes the two aspects of Sambhogakaya and Yamanakaya. And finally then, the inner Vajrayana, post-meditation, leads to perceiving all perceptions as pure, and it leads to the enlightened state of Vajradhara, non-duality. And particularly when we talk about the great perfection, Mahasandhi or Ati Yoga, then there's no stages, and everything is accomplished within the primordial purity and the spontaneous presence of the practitioner's mind. Now, specifically the great perfection, Ati Yoga, this kind of practice purifies three kinds of ignorance. There's the basic ignorance of self. This is dispelled through primordial purity. Inherent ignorance is dispelled with spontaneous presence. Labeling ignorance is dispelled with recognizing display as free from inherent existence. So these correspond to the various, you could say, aspects of the ground, where the basic ignorance is the primordial purity and associated with the practice of cutting through. The inherent ignorance that is dispelled then with spontaneous presence, associated with the practice of what is it Rinpoche calls it? Direct transmission, or sometimes we call it crossing over. And then the labeling ignorance, more than the Yamanakaya level, is just seeing that all display is free from any kind of inherent existence that doesn't have any truth. So with this recognition of wisdom awareness, which is the subject of great perfection practice, then in one fell swoop, we would say all three obscurations are dispelled. So someone who practices in this way, for them, then there's no distinction between meditation and post-meditation. Such a person is what we call a continuous river yogi. And these three kayas are all one in this single wisdom awareness. In terms of the practices, then we have the two practices of cutting through and direct transmission in Tibetan, Trekchö and Töga. And this may bring about enlightenment without bardo. And such a practitioner may manifest enlightenment by dissolving into pure stainless wisdom or displaying the rainbow body. So there's, say, two outward manifestations. The Dzogchen, and what now in this concluding discussion here in White Sail, Thinley Norbu speaks about how Dzogchen, or the great perfections, for the most gifted, the ones who have most devotion and who have no hesitation, who can connect with the teacher and who has some ability to connect with their pure wisdom lineage. So such persons can connect with the great Dharmakaya, enlightenment, as it abides presently as the ground, through the practice of cutting through the practices of treachery. And this, we say, cutting through, because it cuts through all impure or dualistic concepts and phenomena. And the teaching here is, there's typically one teaching that is referred to as the 3 verses that strike the essence. And here the practitioner would recognize the nature of mind, decide on just that one point, this recognition, and through that attain confidence in liberation. With the practice of Turgal, which is what we sometimes also refer to as the skillful means aspect of the great perfection, this is where then the practitioner meditates on the spontaneously present phenomena of enlightenment in terms of the Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya. Now, as far as the details for these practices go, this is generally quite guarded. The teachings on the great perfection, and specifically the teachings on what Rinpoche calls direct transmission, they are very much, we would say, jealously guarded by the Dakinis and are not to be divulged sort of in public spaces. And so Rinpoche doesn't go into more detail about that. But these practices being for the greatest kind of yogis and being extremely profound practices, then there's very much the possibility that these practitioners could attain enlightenment, and when they pass away, then such persons wouldn't have any bardo. They might dissolve into pure stainless wisdom, or they might display the rainbow body for the benefit of others. From here on, then masters like Padmasambhava and so forth, they then continue guiding sentient beings to enlightenment. And Rinpoche, he writes, the great yogi either abides in the youthful vessel body whose self-illumination is like the inwardly dwelling prism of a stainless crystal, or transforms into intangible, miraculous rainbow wisdom body for the benefit of all beings. Then, like many sublime saints and the Vajra master Padmasambhava, his intangible appearance manifests as a guide for tangible beings to lead them towards the inexhaustible qualities of intangible, luminous Buddha fields. So on that note, then I think we conclude then the study of Thinley Norbu Rinpoche's precious teaching on the Buddhist path, which is likened to a white sail which enables sentient beings to cross the ocean of samsara and to arrive safely on the continent of unexcelled perfect enlightenment. So I'd like to thank you all for participating in this study. See if there's any any questions. When Rinpoche says that in meditation, for most of us, there still remains subject-object context, does this refer to what Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche also refers to as the watcher that still remains? Yes, the watcher, our ego, which is still there and checking, controlling. Yes, in fact. I'm not sure about Trungpa Rinpoche himself, but I remember in Mudra, then Trungpa Rinpoche made a translation of Jigme Lingpa's Lion's Roar, which is a text that discusses the sidetracks one can encounter on the path. And in there, Trungpa Rinpoche's translation of Jigme Lingpa's Tibetan runs, that which still notices what is happening is still the tight grip of the ego. So yes, that is when there's still subject-object, very much, yes. May we say the path between meditation and post-meditation is a bridge that may only be built with continued practice. Very much, yeah. In fact, they work together. And so this requires this dedication and commitment to take the practice of and experience of meditation into our ordinary life and integrate it. So we would then sometimes we talk about wisdom, meditation, and ethics is very much also part of that. And in general, we could say when we have wisdom or the view, then we integrate it in two ways. One is through meditation and one is through then everyday life, and that is effectively post-meditation. Yeah, this is yes, dissolving the boundaries between the two. Will these sessions be available for those who wish to reread the text and listen to the teachings again? If so, how to access them? Well, actually, you've all received a link when you signed up here, and that takes you into the Dropbox folder. So I have no intention of deleting that. So you have access to that, and you can go there. So yes, so I would warmly recommend rereading the text. And all I really wish to do is just enable you to read Thinley Norbu Rinpoche's text on its own and be clear on the implications. And hopefully you'll be able to do that without any sort of assistance, not just the pure nectar of his teachings and his words. On the note of webinars, just to let you know, the next webinar, that series that's going to oh, sorry, I didn't realize that was sitting here. This was the quote I was reading before. I'm just going to read it again because it really is sublime, and actually that's a big help in, I think, seeing the words in front of you when you're hearing it. So he says, in regards to the practice of the great perfection, he says, the great yogi either abides in the youthful vessel body, whose self-illumination is like the inwardly dwelling prism of a stainless crystal, or transforms into intangible, miraculous rainbow wisdom body for the benefit of all beings. Then, like many sublime saints and the Vajra master Padmasambhava, his intangible appearance manifests as a guide for tangible beings to lead them towards the inexhaustible qualities of intangible, luminous Buddha fields. So, depending if you're a practitioner of the what we would call cutting through, then where the main, you could say, focus is recognizing primordial purity, that is where there's the recognition of non-delusion and the innate wisdom. That's this image of the inwardly dwelling prism is more that when you have a stainless crystal or a crystal, in itself it's clear. But the qualities of its clarity then particularly is when there's light going through it, and then you have the display of the rainbow colors and so forth. So this is the image of how then compassion would manifest for others. So they're equally the same, whereas one is more outwardly manifesting and one is more, you could say, just dwelling as with the potential of the clarity. So we would say, again, referring to works like the Vajrayana Sutra and so on, that Buddhas, they appear in a non-dual way, simply on the basis of spontaneous compassion that is innate to enlightenment, and particularly then according to the merit of sentient beings. But that's where we would say enlightenment, like all the various sublime saints and masters like Padmasambhava, continually manifest according to the disposition of beings in infinite ways. And so giving them a tangible path so that they can achieve intangible enlightenment. Someone says, I didn't receive the link for the Dropbox. Yes, in the first mail that you received, the link was there. So there hasn't been, in the earlier webinars I used to send out after every session, but at this point then it's all just one link. I put it in the same place. So you should have received it, and if you haven't received it, then let me know. So the next webinar study is this text called Opening the Wisdom Door of the Madhyamaka School. And that's because it's important to understand what we mean by wisdom, and it's also very important to understand what wisdom is not. So we sometimes, in Buddhism, there's a very clear vision of what wisdom is. And of course, when we say the middle way, it's you could say, non-dwelling in any conceptual construct, and that is the absolute Madhyamaka. But the relative Madhyamaka is very skillful in terms of dismantling our attachment to, you could say, innate habits and also acquired belief systems. So we can sometimes refer to Madhyamaka as the philosophy to end all philosophies, because it's simply proving the circular and deceptive logic of any kind of conceptual reference whatsoever. But it does go through some of the, in our world we have various belief systems. Some of them are theistic, believing in some absolute principle, and they can be objectified, and that's problematic. And even worse, we could have this belief in nothing that is the nihilist view. That's much more problematic. So the Madhyamaka teaching is very skillful in outlining this, and particularly in the Nyingma tradition and in the Kagyu tradition, and all across, you could say, all the various traditions. Of course, all the various traditions, they point to what is beyond any kind of conceptualization whatsoever. But in the system, the image you have there on the cover there is Shantarakshita. The system of Shantarakshita and the Nyingma school, Longchenpa, Jamgon Mipa, and so on, there's very much the emphasis of understanding luminosity as inseparable from emptiness. So when we introduce the idea of emptiness, it's not just what we would call a non-affirmative negation that there's nothing, but very much an affirmative negation that we eliminate confusion and we arrive at an inconceivable quality, which is then the scope of the great bodhisattvas. But this study is very helpful, it's very useful for us who are practicing the path, giving us some certainty about what we mean with emptiness, what we mean with wisdom. And so if you are interested in joining that, it's going to start in February 9th, and this book you can get through what's it called again? Padmasambhava Buddhist Center. I'm not quite sure. This was Khenchen Palden Sherab and his brother Khenpo Tsewang Döngyal's place. And Khenpo Tsewang Döngyal is still there, resident teacher. But anyway, if you go to their website, then you can get the details about this. So, anyway, we're grateful to Dongsu Thinley Norbu for his white sail, and we shall pray for his Tulku's long life and his continued activity, the continued benefit of Thinley Norbu, which is activity in this world. Om Swasti, the essence of the ocean, like long life awareness holders, is the deathless lake-born Vajra. By your blessings, may Dongsen Jhana's lotus feet firmly abide for hundreds of kalpas, bringing great waves of benefit to all beings. By this merit, may all attain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. May bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be, and where it has arisen, may it never fail, but grow and increase ever more and more. So thank you.